Welcome into the Door Report. It is episode 173. It is a Wednesday night, August 24th, 2022. We are powered by Alaco Fine Wood Floors. They are family owned and operated for more than 2 decades. Alaco Fine Wood Floors is Nashville and Middle Tennessee's choice for premium quality hardwood floors. Since 1995, Jimmy Alaco and his army of employees have embodied the approach of taking pride in one's craft and providing superior customer service, growing from a one-man shop to a team of 23 professionals. If you're interested in contacting them, you can find their headquarters at 2505 Winford Avenue in Berry Hill, or you can call them at 615-356-0303, or look at their website, alacofinewoodfloors.com. Alaco Fine Wood Floors, serving Middle Tennessee's hardwood flooring needs since 1995. Will, we've made it. We have made it to Hawaii week, not week 1, week 0. Vanderbilt heads to Honolulu. They're already there. They've been there since Sunday and been practicing. I think today was day 3 of practice for Vanderbilt. So they'll continue, probably have a couple more light days tomorrow and then Friday, and then heading into the game on Saturday, 10:30 Eastern time, 9:30 Central on the CBS Sports Network. Well, it's here. I mean, a lot of it now is just kind of waiting for the game, but we do have a lot to get into with week 0 approaching.
Yeah, we have the interview portion in segment 2 with the guy that the name is completely slipping my mind.
Rhys.
That works for the student is Reece. Good grief. There we go. I really hope that's not a sign of how the rest of my memory is going to go with the things that I wanted to say. But he gave a lot of good info on Hawaii's roster, and a lot of that is what we already, I think, probably had down in our notes, kind of the basics, but it confirmed some things and added some context, especially to that depth chart that they posted that had a lot of oars next to it. Another parallel between this Hawaii team with their first-year head coach in Timmy Chang and the first-year head coach in Clark Lee at Vanderbilt last season. So a lot of parallels that we'll get into in this episode that should be fun.
It was eerily similar to Clark Lee. I mean, we were listening to Reece talk. It was like, that's Clark Lee's season last year. So we'll have to see it. We'll see how big of a step did Vanderbilt make after last season. We're going to see a little bit of that step on Saturday, kind of game 1, week 0 of that step. We'll get to our picks as well, starting getting predictions fired back up here. We'll have to see how we do. I don't think we kept track of our record last year. I mean, no use, I guess, but we'll see how we do.
I would say our record was pretty good.
The Mississippi.
I mean, I think we got them all right except ETSU, and I predicted that Mississippi State for Vanderbilt to pull that one off, and that was brutally wrong. But other than that, I mean, if you just ran down that L column, you could have done pretty damn well the last couple of years.
Yeah, so we'll have to see how many more wins in the W column Vanderbilt gets this year. But Rhys Nagaoka will join us a little bit later. Nice conversation with him. He's a student at Hawaii, so he's been right there with a program throughout fall camp. But before we get to the preview, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Door_report and Instagram Door.report. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Our podcast is available on Anchor, iTunes, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. And while you're at it, give our podcast 5 stars and a review on iTunes. All right, let's get to the Hawaii preview. All right, well, one of the programs hit the hardest by the transfer portal. I mean, the more I talk about this Hawaii team and learn about them and research them, I'm thinking of last year's Vanderbilt program. Now, yes, they're on 2 different scales. This is a Hawaii program, of course, not in the SEC. So Vanderbilt got hit a little bit harder in terms of competition, firing right back at you after that many players transferred out. But Hawaii lost 19 players. That's the last I've seen. Maybe there's more to the transfer portal by now, but they only brought in 8 recruits. Will, that's what shocks me. 8 recruits, an 8-player recruiting class after that many players just exited. So obviously a lot of walk-ons that are going to be
18 guys on their current roster started at another school, and a lot of those guys make up that starting lineup that they're going to roll out with in week 0.
That's crazy. It's crazy. So my advice for Timmy Chang, good luck, and I think Clark Lee would agree, because he went through a lot of the same stuff last year with guys coming in, guys coming out, young players being forced into action. So I think with this Hawaii team, Will, as we kind of get into our breakdown of the Rainbow Warriors, we'll talk more about Vanderbilt from their perspective a little bit later. But with this Hawaii team, you're going to see a lot of young guys, and you're going to see a lot of guys that, we may sit there and say, how are they on the field right now? Like, how is that guy out there on the field? So for me, Vanderbilt against Hawaii, I look at imposing their will. Like I look at Vanderbilt being able to do that, and we're gonna know that pretty early on. I think we should know that pretty early on. Hawaii, they're replacing their quarterback Siobhan Cordero, who threw for nearly 2,800 yards last season, 17 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. In the quarterback spot for Hawaii, I know nothing about any of those quarterbacks, but for some reason, my gut tells me Braden Shager will start, and that's good news for Vandy. He only had 600 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions last season. So he didn't even play a whole lot last year, but I think it's going to be Shager. I don't know if you have a gut feeling there. But forgetting who Reece said, he had a prediction for the quarterback for Hawaii on Saturday. I'm forgetting who he said.
It was, I think it was Joey Yellen. He predicted. And I guess
you were thinking Cameron Cooper, the transfer.
Just Cameron Cooper. See, this is the fun part of especially these first 4 games, maybe outside of Wake Forest. So NIU and Hawaii specifically, because Elon's an FCS program, but FBS programs of that level are very interesting to do research on because they are FBS. So they have 24/7 sites. Now, how updated those sites are, how often the message boards are posted on varies a crazy amount between these FBS programs. I will tell you, Hawaii, very hard to find information on. Their 24/7 board had 1 post since, I believe, July 21st. And it was the depth chart, which was yesterday. And then there was one about them being picked last in the Mountain West Conference in their half. And that was on July 21st. So that's the activity level. But Cameron Cooper was interesting. Just because of where he came in from and what kind of recruit he was coming out of high school. He was a 4-star guy, top 360 players nationally, I believe, as a quarterback, and he transferred in from Washington State. So I'm not saying that means that he's going to be the guy. There are guys all the time that look the part, have the arm, and just don't have it, that come out as 4 stars. There was actually one, Luke Ward, that went to Tennessee Tech. He came in, transferred. He's an ESPN 300 4-star and transferred down to Tennessee Tech and ended up actually losing out the starting job and being like the 3rd-string quarterback. We didn't get along in college, so that's why I feel comfortable saying his name here on the podcast. But back to Hawaii, that's why he intrigued me. He looks the part. He's 6'4". He's got a luscious mustache on his ESPN profile picture.
Too. I mean, you see Washington State,
and you see the 4 stars.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what Hawaii has a lot of. They have guys from a lot of good programs that have transferred in. They have a Georgia transfer.
Yeah.
But often,
we don't know much about them.
Exactly. We know nothing about them because they basically were these 3-4-star guys, went into these SEC and other Power 5 schools, wherever they are, and got lost in the shuffle and just never could make it onto the field. Saw the writing on the wall, transferred out. That doesn't mean that all these guys can't play. A lot of transfers change over schools and have a dramatic change in in how their career trajectory is going. Now, how often do you see that at positions that aren't named running back and very specific instances of quarterback? I don't know. These rotational positions are really where you can see a little bit more success. Especially once they have a year or 2 in the system. But a lot of times, these guys that came out as 4 stars, they didn't play for these guys they're transferring away from because they weren't ready. They still need a year or 2 of development. They have potential to be that 3 or 4 star, but right now they're really not. And maybe that's Cameron Cooper. But yeah, from him, it was the Joey Yellen transfer, who started at Arizona State, went to Pittsburgh, and now he's at Hawaii. So he's actually, I don't believe he's played since 2019, actually stepped on the field. And then Shager was the remaining quarterback from the roster. He's a sophomore. And you said last year, 615 yards, 2 touchdowns, 5 interceptions with a beautiful 27.9 QBR. So those are the main options right there. It looks like Yellen or Shager. And I would lean towards Yellen based on the interview, but I guess we will see. And they're keeping a little mystery with the 2 oars on that depth chart and 3 names.
Yeah, and we asked Rhys about it. I told Rhys initially 3-way three-way battle for the starting quarterback spot, right? He said, no, four-way. You can only, the max you can put on a depth chart.
Oh, yeah, that was
So there's actually four. I mean, there's four guys right now battling reportedly. But I said Shager. I think Shager. I have no clue. I don't pretend to have any insight on it, but I just think Shager because he played last year for the team. So I don't know whoever, whether it's Yellen or Shager.
Yeah, the other guy's a freshman that's come in, I believe, because I don't have him down. I didn't go through their 8 guys that came in because I just didn't really feel the need.
There's no reason to. But for Vanderbilt, I think. We look at Vanderbilt last year. Ken Steels, of course, started. I feel stupid asking this, but did we see Mike Wright against ETSU? I can't even remember. I don't think we did.
I don't believe
we were going into that game. We knew Ken Steels was probably going to play the most, but I remember going into that game saying we could see both guys. I think Hawaii, they're kind of going in here. Most fans, their team, they could be thinking, we don't even know who's going to start. We don't know who's going to be back there.
So, yeah, I want to point these out each time we do it. So that's quarterback, directly parallel, almost a very similar exact situation that Clark Lee had. And have we really gone through Timmy Chang and the situation that Hawaii's coming out of? Because we touched on how many guys transfer out in that 19 number, but we have not gone into the shape of that program. It's more than just what happened with Mason, where it was turmoil and the usual dumpster fire that every single coach's tenure ends with. That's not unique, but this was unique at Hawaii, and there was a reason why all these guys were transferring out. I don't know if we've gotten into that early in this preview.
I think it's very similar. What Todd Graham did to that program was very similar to what Derek Mason did to Vanderbilt. I mean, they sent it into the ground. I mean, Hawaii is underground right now. That's where Vanderbilt was last year. So Todd Graham and Derek Mason, now they're different programs and very different.
But the similarities, man, are crazy.
It's wild. Listening to Rhys, for anybody listening right now, you'll realize it. When I realized it even more when Rhys was talking about it, because I was learning about it. I don't know what they've been through. I asked about the offseason to Rhys. So Todd Graham and Derek Mason, those two guys, what they did to the program, very similar to each other. And Timmy Chang, credit to a guy like that who played at Hawaii, who's coming back, very similar to Clark Lee, a guy who played at Vanderbilt, coming back
during the same years almost as well, in what is considered, quote unquote, the years before the glory days, before the days of Colt Brennan, cough, cough. Before the days of the glory days Hawaii, of Vanderbilt football, the parallel of him coming in. I mean, we've already gone through 3 things: the previous coach, the current head coach coming in, and the quarterback situation that aren't just similar. They're
literally the same.
Like years, their players, the age, like everything.
It's crazy.
And their stadiums being redone as well, which just add on to another thing that is.
It really is crazy. I would imagine Timmy Chang and Clark Lee are going to have a good laugh about this and the kind of where each program is. But that tells you about this game. Vanderbilt should win this game. I mean, that tells you that literally where Hawaii is right now. This is about Hawaii. I know Vanderbilt coach speak. This is about us. This isn't, this is about Hawaii and how far they've fallen. Yeah, we were at this spot last year talking about Vanderbilt, but this game is about Hawaii. And people talk about this game. Yeah, I've got Vanderbilt -8. I mean, Hawaii is just awful. That's what you hear. I mean, it's not Vanderbilt. I'm expecting a bowl berth from the Commodores this year. Like that's the reason. It's Hawaii. Like Hawaii is the reason. Every reason for this game. So, but Will, I do want to get more into Hawaii. Dedrick Parson, their running back, is actually a player to watch. Last year, and I'm not saying there's similarities to ETSU last year with. What was his name? Oh my gosh. Quay Holmes. With Quay, I don't think there's any similarities there. This guy's like 5'8", 205. He's more of a bowling ball, but he did have over 600 yards rushing last year, 8 touchdowns. He is a senior too, so he's played a lot of football. But the thing with Hawaii, they're going to throw the football. I mean, they want to throw the football. That's Timmy Chang. That's kind of the coaching tree he's come from. So they're going to want to throw the football around. Will, the challenge, I think there is a challenge for Vanderbilt's defense. Just not knowing what the hell's going to happen. I mean, how do you prepare for this game? I mean, Timmy Chang has the film he has is not at Hawaii. Their offensive coordinator hasn't called plays since I don't even know when. He hasn't called plays at the FBS level. It was was it at Eastern Washington or something where their OC called? I think he was the OC there. So like I said, I don't know. And I feel like Vanderbilt is in that same kind of spot. They don't know what they're going to get.
They are truly going in blind because not only is it guys that you haven't seen on film, on the field, or first time coaches in these positions, or a head coach moving from a coordinator role. Timmy Chang wasn't even a coordinator. This is something that I want to hit on. And the interview was great. But I think it was coming from the perspective of someone that doesn't really fully understand college football and hasn't been following it in detail for a long period of time. Yeah, it's a yes, hasn't been hurt as many times. Like he had light in his eyes. Like that's the thing, is when he's talking about it, you could sense hope. Yeah, we didn't have that. So like what he was saying was similar, but like the deadness inside wasn't there in the same way. But Timmy Chang's coaching history is very brief. We can run through it. He was a graduate assistant at SMU for 2012 to 2013. Then he was an OC and quarterbacks coach at Jackson State at the FCS level 2014 to 15. He was the OC at Emory and Henry in 2016. Then he was the inside wide receivers coach, getting his first FBS coaching experience at Nevada in 2017. Then the tight ends coach 2018 to 2020 at Nevada. And then the wide receivers coach again at Nevada in 2021. And now he's the head coach of Hawaii. So the similarities between Coach Clark Lee,
first-year head coach,
and Timmy Chang, outside now there is the similarity of first-year head coach. I also want to say the similarities thusly into there, because Clark Lee was going to be a Power 5 hire within the next 2 years at a major program, and was going to be on the first line of candidates for any of those jobs.
Might have been hired by Notre Dame.
Yes, and the only reason Vanderbilt got him was because he went to school there. The difference is between Clark Lee and Timmy Chang can be put very simply. The only reason Vanderbilt was able to hire Clark Lee and why they were able to get him was because he went to Vanderbilt. The only reason Hawaii is hiring Timmy Chang is because he went to Hawaii. It's not because his resume is awesome. And they're like, oh, we would never get this guy otherwise. He's a rising star. No, that he was not on the radar as a hot up and coming young head coach that every single school wants. So I want to put that out there, that while they're similar and they were playing during the prime or pre-prime eras of those programs, same time at the surface, they're similar. But I don't want to, put Clark Lee a little bit down. It's all scale. So the parallels, but they're not equal.
Yeah, that's what we were saying. It's different scales, but when you look at the team's scales, it's like, okay, there's some similarities there, but let's not downgrade.
It was funny reading the resume. That's what I wanted to hit, and I didn't say it to him because he was actually incredibly well informed and teaching me things about Hawaii and what had happened with that program. But I wanted to say, just like from the perspective of an SEC program or any football, like MTSU hiring a candidate with that experience. I was just playing in my head last night what the reaction would be if Vanderbilt hired someone at that same age as Clark Lee, but Clark Lee had this resume instead of his resume.
Yeah.
And I was just like, my God. And the reaction on their message boards was 0 comments on the little thing. And I was like, that would have broken everything if Vanderbilt had hired with that resume.
But for Hawaii,
scale of problem.
Yeah. There's not like look at their stadium. There's 9,000, it's 9,000 seats. And they're getting excited about packing that. They're like, we're going to pack our now 9,000 seat stadium. That's the interest. It's like, if you're in Hawaii, they're probably just want to go see an event. They don't want to go necessarily see the football. Football used to be bigger. Of course, you mentioned Colt Brennan and that era of Hawaii football, but how far they've fallen, football's got to be an afterthought at this point. I mean,
well, it's also just you're out on the first off, West Coast is a joke anyway. Like USC has a awful fan base. UCLA, awful. They're basically like the only reason that people think they have great fan bases is because they had national fan bases. And back when that was the only teams that had any viewers, because there were 3 channels on TV. Their actual fan bases in the local community are awful. Like nobody shows up to anything because they're all transplants out in the West. And also nobody likes football as much as they do in the South. So Hawaii, I would imagine that it's not just built into the culture near as much in Hawaii But I don't know much about Hawaiian
Who knows?
culture, if we're being honest. So I have no idea. I've never been further west than Dallas. So I don't want to speak
Same
on
here.
why that is that it's not popular over there.
I will say though, that baseball atmosphere. I don't know if you saw any of that game, and it wasn't a large capacity crowd, but it was loud. Like they were into it, they were locked in, and that was baseball. I don't know if if it's going to be the same for football, but 9,000 people and they're that tight. It's like a Texas high school football game. That's what it's going to feel like. A big, they're right
You
on
stole
you.
what I was going to say.
They're on top of you, and it's not going to feel like anything in the SEC by a long shot, but it's just going to be weird. And they've probably never played in an atmosphere like that. Talking about Vanderbilt, Hawaii certainly has. They did last year, but it was the COVID year. So
I, from the bottom of my heart, believe that the Vanderbilt Commodores, just specifically that team, and anyone that has played there, will never be shaken by any environment they are playing in. Because they play in front of the most raucous away crowds in any sport in America, really.
And they
also do that. Yeah, and they also do that in front of opponent fans at home. And they also have to do that at home. And they play in front of empty stadiums inside of what doesn't seem to us, because of, like I said, scale, but inside of a cavernous 40,000 seat stadium, they'll play when there's 10,000 people in there, and it looks like there's 2,000 people when there are 10,000 people in the stadium. So they see every single color on the rainbow of style of game day environment the Vanderbilt Commodores get to experience during the 12-game season.
They've seen it all. The fact that they're whatever he was, the player development coordinator said that, that's just to get his team motivated. I guarantee you he does not believe what he said. I mean, if he believes that, we've got some issues. But let's get into Vandy. Of course, we got Reece Nagaoka coming up. But from the Vandy perspective, we talked a lot about Hawaii. I said it earlier, Vanderbilt should impose their will because offensively, if you're Vanderbilt's offense, you're Mike Wright under center, you're Ray Davis, you're Will Shepherd, you should be able to look across the field at your defender and be confident you're going to dominate him, because he's probably either a walk-on, a guy that has never played college football, a player that has maybe 1 year of experience. Now, they've got a few veteran guys, but the majority of their players are guys that have very little experience. So if you're a Vanderbilt offensive player, that's what I expect. That's what I expect their mindset to be. We'll know really early on how this game is going to play out. And if I'm Clark Lee, Vandy receives the toss, I receive and shove it down their throats. And because you can send a message right away. Be the SEC team that you are, and go out there and dominate. I mean, that's what Alabama does. They, from the jump, from the kickoff, they say, we're going to dominate you. So, and we didn't see that. I mean, obviously that was going to be hard to see last year for Vanderbilt just because of where they were. But this year, in playing Hawaii, this is the one team Vanderbilt should physically dominate. You could probably say the same thing about Elon. But they should physically dominate this team well, and that's what I look at. And I think Mike Wright, you look at Mike Wright, he could run for over 100 yards. I think he might. I think he will. So it's a lot on Mike Wright's shoulders. It always is. He's the quarterback. But I keep talking about him, but how much did he improve, not only throwing, but just comfort level back there, and kind of gelling with that O-line. So there's always a lot. I feel like we're always scrambling around for the previews. We're just not organized at all, but they should physically dominate Hawaii. I'm just going to leave it there.
There we go. So let's hop back because we skipped past a couple positions on offense real quick, just to recap, because I'm sure that Vanderbilt.
Are we going back to Hawaii?
Familiar with the Hawaii roster. Yeah, this is very quick. Going to get back to what you said. Don't worry, it's not too long, Billy. I know your time is very valuable. So at the running back position, yes, they do have the returner that was the second leading rusher last season, tied, I believe, for first with 8 touchdowns. But he was really the third string running back. They had another guy that was out last season, similar to what happened to Ramon Davis. On his career, they lost him to graduation. He had 520 carries, 3,100 yards, 40 touchdowns. So that was their guy. I didn't dig into that super deep, but clearly he was a key part of that backfield, and last year just was not. So that wasn't random. They lost Day Hunter, transferred out to Liberty, 651 yards, 3 touchdowns, going to the receivers, which is actually, I know it sounds like they've lost a lot. We haven't even gotten to anything yet, the bad positions. They lost their top 3 receivers from last season that in 2021 combined for 145. Top 3, 145 catches, over 2,200 yards and 11 touchdowns of production from that receiving group gone.
Wow.
Also, their 3rd leading rusher from last season was their quarterback, Chavin Cordero. So he's also gone. So 3 of their top 4 leading rushers gone. Also, their top 3 wide receivers gone. And their starting quarterback gone. So I just wanted to make sure and hit on that. Now, the offensive line actually has a little bit of experience coming back. That's the weird part, is everything else, the offensive line has some experience. Now, some of that is transfers, but their starting 5 has experience. However, this Hawaii team, even at the positions that you say have experience, is the thinnest roster as far as experience is concerned that I've ever seen in my entire life. They have starters that have no experience, but forget about it in their second string. They don't have guys that have over like 3 games played in that second string anywhere on the roster. So if one guy needs a breather, you're putting in a fresh face out there on both sides of the ball. I know you probably wanted to get to what you were talking about, which was manhandling.
Well, I do want to add on to what you just said, though, Will. That's where you look at the second half. You go to the second half there.
Yep.
First half, it could be 7-0, 0-0, 10-7 for all I care. But in the second half, Clark Lee knows this. That's when you pounce. That's when you strike on this Hawaii team, because when they get tired, that's when Vanderbilt needs to take advantage. And if Vanderbilt doesn't, look out, because Hawaii, they're going to have their home crowd behind them. There's going to be probably 8,000 Hawaii fans there. They're going to be it's going to be all green. I mean, and they're going to be loud. They're going to be behind that team. So if Vanderbilt doesn't take advantage of those chances because of what you talked about, Will, because you got a second or third string guy out there walk on at corner and you don't hit Will Shepherd on a go. I mean, it's things like that. Like if Vanderbilt doesn't, or they drop an interception or a things like that. If that doesn't happen, look out. I'm not saying Hawaii upset bid or anything like that, but I think they can keep it close if Vanderbilt, if they crap the bed. I mean, that's common sense. But if you're Vanderbilt, second half is when you got to take advantage of those of those second and third string walk-ons that they have no clue what they're doing. I mean, it's game 1. It's game 1 out there for Hawaii. It's like Vanderbilt against ETSU, Will. That's what I expect. I expect to see a Hawaii team that looked like Vanderbilt against ETSU last year. That's what I expect. And if we don't see that, credit to Timmy Chang and the magic wizardry he was able to perform with this team, because I mean, this might be the worst team fielded ever. Like
this is like the worst FBS team in the country. Not even it sounds like we've gone through the parts of the roster that have been ravaged. We haven't even gotten to the 2 worst positions on the team yet. And that's the part that are really the 3 worst. The defense is by far the worst, most ravaged side of the ball as far as production. They lost 7 of their 8 top tacklers. 8 of their top 10 or 11, I believe, top tacklers are gone. And they lost both their starting corners out to transfers. And they lost, when you lose their entire defensive line they have 1 returning nose tackle, and everyone else that played a snap, 7 out of the 8. I just want to repeat that. 7 out of the 8 top tacklers on this roster. So when they go out there, 8 of the top 11 of the guys that brought down the ball carrier last season are not on the field anymore. And that is the part that I just keep hitting at, that yes, this Hawaii team may come out with some unique things, and it's great to go through how Vanderbilt's going to match up with this Hawaii team, but there's no excuse. You go through this roster, you will not find a worse roster in the entire country and in the FBS. If Vanderbilt does not come out here and beat this team handily, then there are going to be some real questions raised about the improvement that this team made from year 1 to year 2. Because I keep like going and edging around my words because of what has happened in this being Vanderbilt, but I just have to take off the gold-colored glasses like I do on the other side. If this wasn't Vanderbilt playing this Hawaii team, if this was any team that's out of a Power 5 conference, I saw this -6.5 line, looked through Hawaii's roster, I would be screaming at the – it moved out. It's moved out. I told you it would move out. It was -6.5 whenever we recorded previously, and I said that line will move out because that line makes no sense.
Well, I missed it. I saw on the TV earlier today. It all of a sudden was 8, so I missed the change. I mean, we knew it was going to happen.
It's because people are realizing that that Vanderbilt, even if they remain flat, they like from last season, they would beat this Hawaii team pretty easily.
Let me ask you this: why this late movement in 2 days before the game? What is
because so normally a lot of these sports books apps have opened up their deposit match things, so fans are just now realizing that, oh shit, it's week 0. College football doesn't start on week 1, like would make sense. I hate the demand week 0, but the demand, and then the market moves. So it's like the stock market, that once too much money comes in on one side, they have to up that line, get more money on the other side to kind of hedge themselves against the other side. So money is coming in on Vanderbilt, like was obvious. This line will approach 10 points easily by the end of it. I'd be shocked if this doesn't end up in double digits by kick. Yeah. This Hawaii team, I will keep repeating it. I looked through the UConn roster from last year, from that UConn team that Vanderbilt played, that we talked about being the worst team in FBS.
This Hawaii roster would have killed this Hawaii team.
This Hawaii team's on paper, and now all these transfers could have been missed stars at their schools, and that's why I'm afraid of saying it, because I've been burned by Vanderbilt a few times in the past, going back to being 2 years old. But this Hawaii, like it's honestly like it
literally doesn't feel real. It doesn't feel real. Like it feels like a really bad created team on NCAA football.
I came on here wanting to like just temper expectations. Like that's how I went in doing my research.
Here's where I'm at. I'm going to give you where I'm at right now with this game. There'll be days, or certain, I'm thinking about the game at night and I'm like, oh, Vanderbilt's going to demolish this Hawaii team. But then there's other days where I'm like, I'm more realistic, and I think this is at Hawaii. They're going to have their whole. It's the island. The island's coming together for this game. It's Vanderbilt versus the island. They're going to have all kinds of momentum, and if say they get a pick 6, and momentum shifts, Vanderbilt starts saying, "Uh-oh." That's where it scares me. So I've been going back and forth with those two scenarios. That's where I'm at. So I'm somewhere in the middle, and we'll get to predictions, but that's where I'm at mentally. And I think most Vandy fans would agree. Like, they don't want to get too excited and confident because, we know better. I mean, that you know what happens when that happens. So it's just happened too many times. So, Will, you want to get into Vandy a little bit here from their perspective before we get to predictions?
Yeah, that's just about what I was about to lead into, Billy. I think you'll like my next stat that'll jump off and allow you to get into it. Is on top of losing their top 7 out of their 8 tacklers on defense, guess what other statistic they lost? Their top 4 sacks. They lost their top 4 sack leaders and only have 1 remaining, and he had 2 sacks last season. He was their number 5 sack leader. They lost their top one, Darius Masao, to UCLA with 7 sacks last season. Another defensive lineman gone to Oklahoma, and another he was actually a defensive back, but had 4 sacks on the season. He's gone to Arizona State. So from a mediocre Mountain West team, that's what I'm getting at. This team was mediocre with who they had graduating. We're going to struggle to repeat what they did last year with normal transfers out, regardless. Lost literally every single piece of their roster that even remotely had any value to any program in the entire FBS. That is what I'm getting at. It is worse than what happened to Vanderbilt. It is immensely worse than what happened to Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt lost like 5 or like maybe of the equivalent of guys that Hawaii lost like 15
Vanderbilt could still field a somewhat competent roster. Like
this, I mean, they're not going to come out and forget to play football. I think they'll put up points. I think the offensive side with that line that Hawaii has against kind of what looks to be a mending, but still a little bit tattered and thin Vanderbilt defensive line could have potential to be able to throw the ball around a little bit.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. That's what they're going to do. I mean, I think that whoever their quarterback is, he'll probably have somewhere around 40 attempts. They're just going to flat throw the ball, and they're going to go quick. And so that's why I think there's a little bit of a challenge for Vanderbilt defensively. I think they'll be up for it. But if you're Clark Lee, Nick Howell in this defense, I just don't know what are you showing these guys? And obviously, they don't have practice. I mean, it's not, they don't have practice film. They have film from last year. That's it. I'm sure they've got some film from what Timmy Chang has ran. But I do think that's the biggest challenge for Vanderbilt in this game defensively. It's not offensively. That shouldn't be a challenge. And if it is, there's bigger problems. But defensively, that's the challenge for me. How do you make those adjustments? The in-game adjustments are going to be huge. I saw a quote on Twitter from Gavin Schoenwald. He was talking about how, or I think it was Bresnahan actually. He said in-game adjustments are going to be huge because we don't know what we're getting into. We don't know what to expect. We have no idea. And so in-game adjustments, we saw Vanderbilt was pretty good. We saw some good halftime adjustments at times last year. So that's another key, Will. What kind of adjustments do they make, and are they able to make? But I go back, Will. Vandy's going to be fired up too. I mean, let's not forget, Vanderbilt, after the season they had last year, they have the biggest chip. They should have the biggest chip out of anybody in the country. Number one, you play in the SEC. Everybody's predicting you go to 2-10. Everyone's joking about what Clark Lee said at SEC Media Days. And, you're Vanderbilt. I mean, at this point in the program, you're a laughingstock. I mean, that's what you are. So take that and go, play pissed off. That's what I expect. And so I think they will. I think they'll do that, Will, as we kind of ease into predictions. Do you have anything else before we get to predictions? Is there any other stat you want to throw at us to compound the issues for Hawaii?
Yeah, I think we got through most of my stats there. But yeah, I mean, you said what does Vanderbilt need to do, and that's great to talk about in-game adjustments. And when I say this, that is done if you are Alabama playing against anyone, an FCS program, you make in-game adjustments based on what the other team is doing. What I'm getting at with this Hawaii team is this is going to show me a lot about the future, and it's kind of going to shape it. The scoreboard's irrelevant because this can happen in a 10-point win or it can happen in a 50-point win. It doesn't really matter. It's just control of the game, and Hawaii should be adjusting to Vanderbilt. Yes. Because it goes one way always. One team adjusts to the other, and it's fine. Within the first 5 minutes, the initial script and game plan is out the window. All that's gone. The team and coach that has to make real adjustments throughout the game is the team that has inferior talent at whatever position that is, because that's the only time coaching matters, is if you are the team with inferior talent in game coaching. Is what I'm getting at. Adjustments. Superior talent beats inferior talent during the game. The Tim Tebow quote is fine. It's untrue. It's very true if you look at it's untrue. It's true if you look like a Greek god Adonis as Tim Tebow and are like 6'2" with python arms. And you're like, hard work beats talent when talent stops working hard. I'm like, shut the. But Clark Lee should be able to establish with pressure. Yes. I want to see pressure on a first-time starting quarterback, first-time head coach, first-time coordinator, first-time playing together, even if they have game experience offensive line, brand new receivers, brand new starting running back, and that's just on offense. And the read option with Vanderbilt, Billy, is very tough to defend, and it is very instinctual to defend because you can't just have these set rules. And if you have a first time playing together defense, the worst thing you can play against is a read option, in my opinion, because it's all about staying disciplined and having this instinctual feel for where your teammate is going to be.
Look at you talking X's and O's football. I love it.
Yeah, Billy, I play.
I love it.
And I was not a physical freak, so the X's and O's would be about
no Tim Tebow.
All that. Yeah, I didn't. I wasn't 6'2", 220 coming out of high school. I'll tell you that.
No, but Will, real quick before I agree with everything you said, by the way. Real quick before we get to predictions, let's name a player that we're most excited to watch for Vanderbilt. Do you have a player you're most excited to watch in terms of, we saw him last year, but now I'll go with you first. Most excited player to watch that you're excited to watch.
I'm going to do my prediction first. I got to think on this. That's a good question.
All right. I'll go with mine. I'm most excited to watch Kane Patterson and just see what kind of, because I think we know the kind of player he is. He's a 4-star kid. He played at CPA in Nashville, and but he didn't get to play a whole lot at Clemson. And I want to see, I want to see what he looks like in an SEC defense. And now he won't be starting. Ethan Barr is going to start, but they'll rotate. He'll be in there. He'll be playing. And so, how fired up is he? How ready to go is he? He was all over the field in the scrimmage a couple weeks ago. So was his little brother Langston. He's going to play against Hawaii as well. So I'm going to go with Kane Patterson. I was going to go Anthony Orji, but I mean, let's face it, we know what we're going to see from Orji. He's going to dominate. He'll probably have at least 10 tackles. So, but Kane Patterson, how active is he? How much does he get in there and play? And what kind of player is he still? Because he has gotten old. But mine is going to be Kane Patterson, Will.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with my number one, which is Ramon Davis. I knew there was one that I wanted to say that was just that like I had in my mind and we'd already talked about because we got to see him for a game and a half basically last season and just how the carries are going to be split. Yeah. I'm curious how much Rocco and Patrick Smith are going to be utilized. And I want to throw out the other one, which is my more obscure one, which is Jeremy Lucien. I'm curious how he's going to fit into that rotation. And I think he is specifically going to be the make or break. That position group is going to be the make or break for the defense. Can that extremely inexperienced secondary come out and just be serviceable, be average? Because I think the linebacking group has potential to actually have some decent depth if it can stay healthy. And the defensive line is thin but talented if they can remain healthy. The linebackers and defensive line, I think the names, at least in that first group, look like they could be a pretty damn good front 7 or 8. Now it's the back end in the safety and corner and DB positions that you just don't have the experience. You're going to have a lot of guys, especially rotating in, that just don't have a lot of snaps on the field. And Lucien coming in from Connecticut has a lot of snaps on the field, even if they are for a pretty bad UConn team. He was a kind of sought after transfer with a lot of good experience on a team that doesn't have experience overall. Right. But he's really within that secondary group, man, that's really the only main experience that they have.
Yeah. And so BJ Anderson and Tyson Russell are going to start at corners. Lucien is right behind Anderson. Justin Harris and Jeffrey Ugo are right behind Russell.
Yeah. I think Lucien's going to be that nickel slot corner type guy.
And Mahoney's going to be moved around. He's starting at safety. Max Worship also at safety. So yeah, the depth chart looks interesting. We didn't even really get into that, but I don't know that there were too many surprises. AJ Swan, of course, is the backup.
The Mahoney thing at safety.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. We should have got more to the depth chart, but we will do.
We would, Billy, if some of us weren't on a time limit.
I gotta go.
We could have taken our time here,
crunch, Will. I'm on a time crunch, but all right, let's get to predictions. I'll go first here, Will. Obviously, I'm going to pick Vanderbilt to win this game. I really struggle with the score, though, and how many points Vanderbilt's going to put up. I'm not ready to say Vanderbilt's going to score, 30, 40 points. I think they'll be in the 20s. I just don't know. Obviously, they should score. Realistically, they should be in the 30s and 40s in this game. But I think it's going to be a low-scoring, ugly game just because neither offense has a quarterback that we know that can move the ball down the field. I mean, Mike Wright, obviously we've seen him make some plays like that, but they're going to run the football. Vanderbilt's going to want to run the football. Hawaii's going to want to throw, but I don't know that they'll be able to get the momentum, through the air that a lot of people may think they will. I've got Vanderbilt 24-10 over Hawaii. I was tempting to go 28, maybe in the 30s, but I went 24-10. And I mean, hell, they averaged 15 points a game last year, scoring 24 points against anybody. That's an improvement. So I think Vanderbilt's going to impose their will on the Hawaii defense. I think big days for Ray Davis, all three running backs. I think Davis, Smith, and Griffin are just going to run all over this Hawaii defense. Mike Wright, here's one of my bold takes. He's going to have over 100 rushing yards. He did it a couple times last year. This is the worst defense Vanderbilt's going to play this season by far. And so I think Mike Wright, big day in the read option. I mean, read option, I think a lot of these will be design runs with him. He's going to have a lot of those, but I also think him getting out of the pocket, he'll be doing that a lot. So I got him over 100 rushing yards. Not sure if that's a prop bet anywhere. Doubt it. But another hot take, Will, I think A.J. Swann will play on Saturday night. I think he's going to play at some point in this game. Number one, I think Vanderbilt's going to get up, and maybe he'll, I think he would play in the fourth quarter likely. But I just think I expect to see Swann. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't. But I also think that's another hot take, bold take for me. I think Swann gets in the game at some point on Saturday. And I mean, he's the backup. So say Mike Wright loses his helmet, goes down, he's going in. And so that I'm excited for that. I'm excited to see Swann and what he looks like in game action, not just practice. I've seen it in practice. He's got a live arm. He's very impressive, but in a game against a maybe not legit D1 team, but a team, an opponent, just what he looks like. So, well, I'm going to go 24-10. I'm interested to see where you go. And we've also got Reece Nagaoka's pick coming up too.
Yeah, there were a couple depth chart things that you reminded me of. The AJ Swann, I wanted to point out there wasn't an or, and I think we both expected Seals to be in that second spot.
Yeah.
On the running back position in the second string, you actually had Patrick Smith ahead of Rocco. So you had Rocco sitting in that third string spot. And then the other main interesting point in special teams was Will Sheppard returning punts, which is very interesting.
I wanted to get to that. Yeah.
That will be something, not a player, but just that in general, because Hawaii has a two-way guy. He kicks and punts for them. Ooh. And I believe he's going into his second season of one and the third season of the other. I don't have it pulled up in front of me, but when I was reading, I saw that. So I think that will play a part. That's one of the things I wanted to bring up in the prediction. They have an experienced punter, one of the few spots. I think that will allow Hawaii to maybe get Vanderbilt in some precarious field position situations, have a team going into those first game jitters, read option stuff, make a mistake. But this Hawaii offense, with how they're going to run things, with where Vanderbilt's weaknesses are, I think the quick passing game, lots of throws, I think that they will be able to move the ball a little bit. I think Hawaii, I'm going to go with a little more points than you went with. I'm going to say Hawaii at 20, because I struggled with the score of this game. I have Vanderbilt covering regardless in any of the scores that I had down, but Hawaii 20, and I'm putting Vanderbilt at 38.
Okay.
And so I think Vanderbilt. So 18 points. I had it anywhere from that. I also had Vanderbilt in the low 30s. So somewhere in the 30s for Vanderbilt and high teens, low 20s for Hawaii. Yeah. It's not an ideal matchup against Hawaii's offense, even with the talent differential in their style. However, Hawaii's defense you couldn't draw, besides their experience, nose tackle. They've lost all of their presence on the defensive line, thin linebackers, and no guys in the secondary that are going to be playing tight press coverage. Every single thing that they worked on should be open from the spring game through summer, through fall with the quick passing stuff. No way with the experience level of this Hawaii team, they will be pressing up. And if they do, then these Vanderbilt receivers should eat them alive. So either the short stuff is going to be open for Wright, or the long stuff, the read option, they should be able to run all over this team. So 38 Vanderbilt, 20 Hawaii. Commodores cruise, in my opinion. It doesn't feel that close. This is the last confident thing you will hear me say. From here on out, it's going to be how and where and what did I miss that has led me to once again feeling confident in a week one victory for Vanderbilt. What have I done to get here so wrong to be in this position again?
We'll have to see how early your hopes get up here. Is it Elon? Is it Northern Illinois? Is it Wake Forest? We'll have to see. But, well, one more thing on the depth chart. Ray Davis, for some reason, Ray Davis scares me as one of the kickoff returners. I just, maybe I think I'm probably overthinking it, but I don't love that. I don't love Ray back there. He's the starting running back. I know they have depth at running back, but Billy, just kind of scares me.
I have a question. I have a question. How many times do you see returns?
You don't.
Like ever.
Anything can happen.
That's
he's
true.
Rolled up. He catches one. He runs.
I think Clark learned his lesson again in the Georgia game and at other times. I think he learned that the injury risk is worth the trade-off. It was the Bobby Johnson approach to when they had a hell of a run of having incredible punt returners. People forget that Earl Bennett was a great punt returner. Andre Howell, DJ Moore, Cameron Hayward, they had some guys back there. And Darius Sims in the kickoff
he's
unit.
On the staff.
Yep. Warren Norman was an unbelievable kickoff returner as an SEC Freshman of the Year player at Vanderbilt in 2005, I believe. He was returning kicks and busting. That can change a game.
Yeah.
But more than the guy with the ability to bust off the return, that's one thing when you're a less talented team like Vanderbilt. The little things like that are what can change things. It's the difference is Vanderbilt cannot have a mistake from a special teams unit. That cannot happen. I know you have to go, Billy, but it's more of putting a guy back there that is not going to fumble the ball or bobble it and put your team in a better field position situation, because more than busting up a return is just diving forward for 5 to 10 yards versus letting the ball roll for losing 15 yards. With a running style offense, sorry, I'm trying to get it in here. With a running style offense, that 25 yards can be the difference in scoring 24 points versus 38 points. So there you go, Billy.
God, you know how to talk fast. I could never do that. I could never do that.
I know my second career was being a rapper if this podcast doesn't work out.
Oh man, rapper will buy. Cam Johnson was really good at. He was really good at just being
very sure-handed.
Yeah, Jaden McGowan, young guy back there. We'll have to see. Will, I know we probably it could have been a little bit longer, but we did get it in. That's your Hawaii preview, and
that's what she
coming up. 10:30 Eastern.
I've been watching The Office.
Oh man, 10:30 Eastern time kickoff Saturday night. Will be watching. I'll be staying up, and we may just have a little post game spaces for you on Sunday morning. So stay up with us. We'll be there. But you've been listening to episode 173 of the Door Report, powered by Alaco Fine Wood Floors.
Remember.
Welcome back into the Door Report alongside Will Byram. I'm Billy Derrick, and we'd like to welcome you back into our interview segment as we continue the preview of the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors. We welcome in Rhys Nagaoka. He's an intern for the Honolulu Star-Advertiser, and he's also the sports editor for the Kaleo Hawaii student newspaper, so very active on campus. He's been covering the team leading up to this game with fall camp as well. Rhys, thanks for hopping on with us. What's it been like covering the Rainbow Warriors this offseason?
It's been pretty fun, actually. I mean, there's a lot of question marks, I know, especially at the quarterback position, but there have been other, there's so many newcomers that there's hard to really say who's going to start where, except for maybe the offensive and defensive line. And I mean, when you see what this new coaching staff is doing, I mean, I think it's got a lot of fans excited for what could be coming up in Hawaii for the next couple of years.
But Hawaii had a lot of roster turnover, and that is something that Vanderbilt fans are very familiar with, even though they may not be very familiar with the Hawaii roster. Can you name off just a couple guys that maybe left that roster that are going to leave some major holes that are going to be felt this year for the Rainbow Warriors?
Well, I think the biggest one is your quarterback. I mean, Chevin Cordero was pretty much like he was a great story. He was a local kid who started for Hawaii, and he was a dual threat guy. He had a really good arm. He could improvise if he had to, and defensively, I think that's where Hawaii got hurt the most, because they lost one of their interior defensive linemen, Justice Devai, to San Diego State, another Mountain West team. They lost their top tackler, Darius Muasau, to UCLA, to the transfer portal. And then another, I want to say he was like a hybrid linebacker safety, but it was Corey Bethley. He had a really good performance. I'm not sure if you guys saw his highlights against Fresno State last season, but he balled out in that one, and he's moved on to, I believe, Arizona State. And yeah, and there were a couple of others. I mean, you had Jonah Laulu as your edge rusher. He's now at Oklahoma, and I mean, there were a lot of, like you said, there's a lot of roster turnover, and I think there's quite a couple of big holes that they have to fill.
What can you tell us about the head coach, Timmy Chang? I heard he played at Hawaii, and obviously has prior coaching experience. But for Vanderbilt fans who aren't familiar with his track record, what kind of experience does he have prior to coming back to Honolulu, and maybe some early expectations for him and his staff coming into this season?
So Timmy Chang, he's only been a coach for about 10 years. This is his first head coaching position, obviously, but I think he started about 2012. He was a graduate assistant at SMU under his former college coach, June Jones. He had a couple of coordinator stints. I believe one was Jackson State. The other was Emery and Henry. And then he got hired by Jay Norvell to be their tight ends or receivers coach, one of those two. And then they swapped as the years went on. And when Jay Norvell went to Colorado State, um, Timmy Chang and and remainder bits of the staff followed him to Colorado State, and then before actually coming here to Hawaii. And um, so what was the question again? I mean, it was.
So yeah,
He was
just
asking
overall
about Timmy Chang and just overall expectations. And sorry, Billy, you did the same thing. Started talking when you were on mute. You just fixed it a little quicker than I did. But just expectations overall in year one for a Hawaii team there.
Well, I think a lot of fans, their expectations are they want to get to a bowl game. I feel a little bit more like if they can get 4 wins, I can see that as a win for them. But I mean, Timmy Chang, he's got the state rocking. I mean, it's like he was when he was here 20 years ago as a quarterback, and I was probably more like 15. But yeah, I mean, he's got the support of the state. He's expressed his love of the state. His staff has done the same. I think it's this was really random, but like when they got hired back in the spring, they were actually in the campus center food court and whatnot. I've never seen any coach for any sport be here. And then he's walking in here with his staff, wearing aloha shirts, slippers, the whole lot. And it was like this is a guy who really cares about the university, and he's publicly expressed that he cares about I guess about how much other sports do as well. We've seen him at other games, his coaching staff at other games. I mean, I think he's the real deal. He's a little inexperienced. I mean, he hasn't been a coordinator at the FBS level or anything, but I think his staff is just as experienced at some points. They're a little young, but I think this could be one of those staffs you look back on and it's like, wow, I can't believe we had all these guys.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of parallels that can really be drawn, obviously, to a slightly lesser, I don't want to say lesser, but different extent with Hawaii there with, former player, first time head coach coming from the coordinator role. And we can tell you here that did not go so well game one for first time head coach Clark Lee and his young staff. But everything that I've read, he seems like the real deal, seems committed to rejuvenating a program that at one point was pretty unique and had a lot of success. And that wasn't that long ago. So I definitely think that he's the right guy on that trajectory long term. But for Vanderbilt fans and for me and Billy here, I think that we're really focused on this game one, year one. And Hawaii lost a lot of guys, and you went through some names there. They lost 7 of their 8 top tacklers from last season. They lost their top 3 wide or receiving targets, including one of their running backs, their starting running back, lost the starting quarterback. How do you think this team is preparing, and how many of these guys transferring in, let's say, are there some names that are popping early in fall camp and leading up to this week one of guys that are maybe replacing some of those losses for Hawaii?
Well, I think if for those replacing the newcomers, I mean, you have to look at, well, I think the biggest one I think to me is Jordan Murray. He's like a 6'5" tight end. He's played receiver at Missouri State. That's where he's coming in from. I think he might be the person or the player on this UH team with the best NFL prospect wise. You know, he's a lot faster than he looks. He'll win these contested one-on-ones and create these big mismatches where he'll beat your linebacker, he'll beat your linebacker off the line, or he'll jump up and contest the catch against your defensive back. I mean, he's pretty good. He's really good. Transfer wise, I mean, Matthias Soli on the defensive end on the defensive line from transferred in from Arkansas. He is really good. I mean, I don't know what this means, but he's been beating our offensive tackles, the first teamers coming off the edge. There are points where he's had, I think, at least 2 sacks that they probably could have whistled back to the line, but it was, let the play go on during scrimmages. But he has been very, very good. I think JoJo Forrest, another transfer from Oregon State, he is going to be probably your cornerback 1, and then on the opposite side, it could be somebody like Verdell Edwards, former safety at Iowa State, turned corner here, and he just brings that hard hitting ability again.
All right, let's go to the quarterback position here, Rhys. Obviously, the most important position on the field. Reading the Hawaii depth chart indicates a 3-way battle right now for the starting quarterback spot. Do you possibly have any insight for us, for Vanderbilt people, who may start on Saturday night for the Rainbow Warriors?
Officially sent. I think it's 4 quarterbacks officially
Oh, is it
because
4?
they can't go. Yeah, they can only go 3 deep, I think, on the depth chart. But I mean, to me, it's got to be between Braden Shager and Joey Allen for who's going to start Saturday night. They have been the ones who've gotten majority of the first team reps in camp, during scrimmages, everything. Cameron Cooper is that guy who can be that dual threat quarterback where you can put him in these running sub packages if you want to. But he's also, I would say, he's not. You can't just like throw or right off his arm too. I mean, he's got a pretty good arm. I think it's just a matter of can he get that accuracy down. And but as
Yeah,
for
and
who would
I want to
start,
break in there about Cameron Cooper. Sorry, I was researching Hawaii's roster. He's actually a transfer in from Washington State, former 4-star top.
Ooh.
I think he was top 360 national QB. So that was actually somebody's name specifically that popped. That I was kind of curious, Reece, if you had any knowledge of how he was faring in the quarterback battle specifically, because that's kind of who I would guess, for better or for worse, who would kind of come in there and be able to lead the battle as highly nationally ranked as he was. But it seems like, based on what you're saying, that's not the case.
well, I think the other thing too is that there is another transfer quarterback. Like I talked about, I think Joey Allen, he is a transfer from Pitt. He was another, I want to say, 3 or 4 star quarterback. Transferred to Pitt from Arizona State. This is his third school, and he is. I would say he's probably ahead of Cooper. He's the quarterback that would be competing with Braden Shager for that starting quarterback spot. I don't know. There's so many unknowns, I think, with this whole team, that they're going to put these oars on the depth chart, and they're just going to see what this first game throws out to them, and then be like, okay, maybe we can solidify this position. Maybe we can change this position, that sort of thing. But I mean, quarterback wise, I would think it's between Shager and Yellen based on what they've been seeing. I don't I if me personally, I would think it's Braden Shager, but that's yet to be seen, I think, for
Reece, let's go to the crowd. Will and I have talked about this. Of course, it's interesting looking at the capacity of the stadium. It's only about 9,000, of course, but I saw where Hawaii's online ticket site shows only 62 individual seats remain for the game on Saturday night. So, what kind of crowd and kind of energy are you expecting? Are you expecting the city to rally around it and show up Saturday night? And if so, what do you think that could do for both teams?
yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be really rocking. I think they announced they're going to have I think the Green, it's a reggae group, I think. I have to double check. I can't remember which genre they are, but they're going to be performing at the basketball arena on campus before the game, so that they're going to have a really, hype up the fans, that sort of thing. And I think it's going to be very interesting. I think we saw at points when you are going into the end zones, there's one end zone is our student section, and it gets really loud in there. I think it's the best we've seen in a long time, personally. And there were points where last season, if the opposing team was to go towards that stadium or that end zone, it would be like just impossible to score, especially with the defense that they had last season. So I mean, it's going to be I think it's going to be really rocking. I don't really know how much. I think you said 62 tickets remaining, which is incredible. I know the season ticket holders are going to be, they're dedicated. They wanted to get into this really badly, and it's going to be fun, I think. And plus, I think everybody's a little excited too because they just announced they're going to expand the stadium, in preparation for next season.
So there have just been a couple quotes, and I know Billy may have wanted to get to this, but I'm going to steal his thunder. There have been some quotes coming out from the Hawaii support staff, whether it's the athletic administration or it's I think it was, I have one pulled up in particular we'll get to, and I just want to get your thoughts on it and the perspective, because they're actually kind of funny. But and this is sorry, I want to get this correct. Jeff Reinbold, the director of player development there at Hawaii, said, "I cannot wait for the moment when we come out into that stadium. I know there's going to be 9,300 people there, but I will bet you that the energy is going to be like there's 90,000 in that stadium." And then he went on to say that Vanderbilt has no idea what they're getting into. Just how do you feel about the quotes of kind of adding fuel to the fire of already an SEC team traveling? out of conference to a non-Power 5 school, then adding fuel to the fire by saying that Vanderbilt has no idea what they're getting into. It's going to feel like 90,000, which will still not be even a top 2-3 biggest crowd Vanderbilt will play in front of this season. It will still not be a top 3 crowd. Do you think that adds fuel to the fire for Vanderbilt's side, or do you think it adds a little motivation for the Hawaii side, saying that, look, the guys around here believe in us? I think it can go both ways. I'm not necessarily saying it's a bad thing.
Well, I think it's kind of, you split, like you talk about, when you split the second quarter, I think that back half, it's going to be a motivator for Vanderbilt, where it's like, are you serious? We've, like you said, they're going to experience, I believe you said, well, at least not even a top 3. This isn't even a top 3, or 90,000 wouldn't be a top 3, excuse me. But
you got Bryant Denny, and you've also got Neyland as a last season with 100,000. Yeah, so it's a fun trek down here in the South.
One day I got to try that. But yeah. I mean, I think, well, with Jeff Reinbold, he's that motivator. I think he is going to be that guy, your hype man, essentially. And yeah, I think that's his goal. He wants to motivate these players to be, really good. I mean, that's kind of what his thing is, and this, I think, might be kind of right. I mean, the state will show up. I mean, this is the only university event, I believe, on campus that day. There might be a couple high school football games, but all of the eyes are going to be on this because everybody wants to see, how does this team look? How is Timmy Chang going to be and his staff going to be as a coach? And, the thing is, we just don't know. I mean, you talk about Steven Tsai, he had a column today. He was like, when people ask me in Costco, it's like, how do you think this team looks? And it's like, man, I don't know. So I think that's kind of what everybody wants to know, is like, what is this team going to bring?
Hey, I'll give it to Reinbold. He got us talking about it. We're talking about it right now. He did something right. So that honestly gave us a little fuel to the fire. The door port, got us going a little bit. But we won't hold you too long here, Rhys. Time to get your prediction for Saturday night. Of course, 10:30 Eastern time kickoff. A little bit earlier for you guys over there in Hawaii on the island there. But give us your game prediction for Saturday night. What's going to happen?
Oh, well, I think it's first off, it's going to be really hot. 4:30 in the afternoon. The sun is going to be in the faces of everybody. The TV cameras, the press box, the coach's box. It's going to be blaring. They had a practice at that time in that stadium a couple weeks ago, and it was really hot out there. I think I don't know how it is up in Nashville, but it was
pretty hot.
It felt really hot. But the one thing I will say is that these guys, they are very well conditioned. I talked to a couple of the assistant coaches, and they were all crediting Hawaii strength and conditioning coach Cody Cook for getting them into shape. And I come to think of it, I haven't seen one player cramp during practice, which is amazing. First off, and it's good. The weather, I think, is going to be a concern for. It would be a concern for me. I mean, it'd be warm, but I think for Hawaii, to me, if they need to be aggressive and get on the board right away in those maybe first 2 drives of the game. Otherwise, I feel like they lose any momentum they have, and it's going to be hard to build it up, like you said, with this Vanderbilt team.
There it is. There's the wait. Did we get a pick there, Rhys? I think I missed
it. Score. We need a score. We need to. We're going to make you have a definitive score because we're going to make ourselves do it too.
I gotta stick with what I told the guys over at the Vanderbilt Hustler. I'll put Hawaii 31-27.
Ooh,
he's going. That's higher scoring than I think.
But 31-27.
I'm not going to reveal mine yet. We'll do that on our segment one, Billy. I don't want to give mine away.
Hold on yours, Will.
I'm not doing mine. I'm not doing mine yet.
Oh man, Rhys, thanks for taking the time, man, and good luck with the coverage on Saturday night. We're looking forward to it.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you guys for having me on here first. Yeah.